Hi and welcome to a new tutorial. Today we're gonna dive into the topic of rendering, and we'll do a studio setup with our lamp. And make sure before we start that you have copied the HDRs, the high dynamic range images I provided, to your source images folder of your project. I hope you have a project, otherwise set yourself one. And be sure when you open up your lamp that you have your project set project. Desk lamp is mine here, set, so that everything will work correctly then afterwards. And I have to import, of course, my light bulb and the plug, and I'll do this with file import. You see, because I set the project, now I'm directly in the scenes folder, and I import my light bulb here. What I do is I get rid of any stuff I don't need, so the image planes, get rid of them, then make groups with Command G or Control G, and name your stuff. Light bulb. I import the plug, also plug, continue. So the image planes, I get rid of them, and my plug is obviously hidden there. And be sure that you delete history when you imported anything, because I have history on it, and that's not so good. So go to Edit, Delete All by Type History, so that everything is cleaned up. Name it plug. And you see here my center isn't here perfectly, so I do here modify center pivot, and now I can scale it a little bit more and put it to where it should be. I have the feeling that my cable is maybe a little bit thin, but I leave it here, and I won't put the bulb inside, but I'll try to. I have to scale it also, because if I want to put it inside, it's way too big, and so that it would fit quite well. But I leave it here because I want to see it in the rendering. So I just put it here, some kind of laying on the floor somewhere. Maybe it's still too big. And so that I can see the floor and I'm not sticking through it, see it here, I will insert myself a floor and more or less a studio background. So what you do is you create polygon primitives when you don't have it here in the shortcut list. I'll put a plane here. Okay, now I see where I'm sticking through the floor. I set here the subdivisions to 1. I scale it up. And what I do is I take the edge here on the back side, do an extrude, push it up, and with that thing I do a bevel with quite a big fraction. It depends now how big your scene is, and I will scale it down anyway here in the next step, but I want this kind of big form. So segments 12 is maximum. Then what you should also do is name here the stuff, but I don't know how all this stuff is called. So cable, delete the curve, my button, group it, button. This is my base. This is some kind of connection. And I group everything except the background to lamp. Okay, now my groups are, we have to background, to delete, or build new groups, background. And what is important in rendering? That your lamp isn't actually that big, because in rendering one grid here is 1 meter, and the size of your object also has effect on the rendering. So of course the lamp is definitely, it doesn't have to be perfect, yeah, but when I think that this is 20 or 30 centimeters high, it should be that big. And I could also then scale my background a little bit. Okay. I have to do a new group for the light bulb, because my whole group was destroyed a little bit. So just be sure that you position everything good, that it's not cutting too much, that's okay. And also the plug. A little bit smaller. And also move the vertices here. Oh, I have to move the whole cable. So be sure that everything is adjusted. Oops. So more or less accurate. And here nothing should be in the air. And I see here I have to insert another edge loop so that it isn't smoothing out here. So good. This is my scene setup, and of course in before I start rendering, because I want this to be my view, I just rotate the studio a little bit. It depends on how you want to look at it, because I don't want to see here any background stuff. So this is my setup, and We will use the renderer Arnold, and for that you can do a rendering here with these tools here, and also we have some kind of live rendering tools. But before we start, when I do a rendering here, it will be completely black because we don't have any light in our scene. And there are so many options to create light in Arnold, and I will just show you here in lights. You can set up different types, and also here in where it is great lights, we have some kind of ambient, directional lights, area lights, and so on. I will leave this topic in a basic way, because of course when I do here some kind of directional light, let's see what happens. This is more or less sunlight, and when I do a rendering here, yeah, we have light in our scene. And with different light types you can create different styles, of course, but I want to show you the most easiest way of getting a perfect light situation without using this simple lights. And for that we will create here a sky dome light, and we will create a studio that lights up our scene automatically. And so you go to Arnold Lights Sky Dome Light, and what does this do? This creates a big sphere here, and this is, when you render it, it is a white sphere around it. You see it? Now you have a smooth light. Of course we don't have materials yet, but this creates a very nice basic light, but there is no reflection in it because it's completely white around. So we need some more stuff we have to do, and that's we have our sky dome here, and you open up the options, the attribute editor. Good. Now in the attributes you see here sky dome light shape, and here we have the color now white, and this is the place where we add our studio. So go here to the checker and select your file. Then you get here the place where we can select actually the file where it is. So go to this folder, and because we set our project, it's jumping right into the source images, and there we go to studio, and I provided you 4 different studios, and you can take whatever you like best. Okay, I will show you also the difference in light, but of course you can see it more or less later when we have reflective materials on our lamp. So I just take this is more or less my favorite one, Studio 20, but you can take whatever you like. So what we have here, actually we have here studio background wall like we built it, and because here on the scene there is my also background, and what I do here, I rotate my scene more or less that it has also the background oriented in the right direction. Okay, and now let's see what would be the effect. What we can do is, now I don't use the normal render, I open up here the Open Arnold render view. This is a live renderer, and there we have a play button, and when you activate it, you see it's creating us also more or less similar light to the other. It's not so bright, so if you want to have it a little bit brighter, you can adjust here the exposure a little bit. You see here the effect is, you see it right away. And of course it's quite, the image is quite grainy, but we will check on the settings here later on, because now for the first rendering setup this should render fast so that we see everything right away. And if we adjust the settings, because the samples are here important, it's one of the important things, but when we're happy with our materials, then we will do the rest. Okay, maybe you should save your scene, save scene as. I'll do it lamp render. And I see here my cable should also be in the third mode. So 3. Now for setting up the materials, I just pause here my live rendering because the computer is working quite hard otherwise the whole time, and I will show you different stuff in material setup. When we have a look at our images, so the goal is that we create more or less the look here we have on the image. Of course, it's an illustration, but we want a glossy plastic stuff here, and inside we have a matte white. Then we have more or less a chrome, not perfectly glossy chrome here on that, then some black stuff, and of course the plug is some kind of rubber, and the spotlight, we have also different kind of metal and more or less glass materials. Okay, that's our goal. So keep the images and the look in mind. You should also always, when you do some projects, have a look at reference images. How does the material look like? And try to create this look in Maya. Good, we will start with the blue stuff, and for that, select the object, go to Assign New Material. You see here Arnold, then you activate the word shader, and we will always use here AI standard surface. This is our basic material we will use most of the time. This material has the color white, and you can adjust here, of course, some kind of blue, whichever blue you like to have. You can also choose any other color, so it doesn't matter if it's blue or not, but I'm trying to create the look. And also the base has this color, and what I do is I don't create a new material. I have to move here the position a little bit so that you can see everything now. So now you can see it. I use here Assign Existing Material, and actually I should name the material AI Standard Surface because we will create different materials, and if we want to reuse it, of course it takes the same material, and for that AI Standard Surface, now I go here to AI Standard Surface and name this blue plastic. Important, press enter. Okay, so that it's renamed. And now I check here in my Arnold render view. Where it is, I lost it. Yeah, somewhere. I press my play button, and now you see here, we see a little bit more of our studio because now we have reflections in here. What we can adjust now. So this was in the 3 mode, now it's in 3 mode. When we want to adjust the material attributes, we go to right-click Materials Attributes, then it jumps right here into the blue plastic. And we're just playing around a little bit so you get to know what you can do. For example, when I increase the metalness, this is happening. Okay, then you have immediately a more or less metal look. We will need this later on, so I just switch it back. Then the specular color is actually this here. So when you have specular reflection, when you would change it, for example, here to red, you see it's getting red. Okay, we don't want that, so leave it to white. Or maybe you can use a light blue or something to create a little bit of colored effect, but don't overdo it, okay? Then the roughness is a very important thing here. You see it's set to 0.2, and when I put it down to 0, it is perfectly glossy. You see every detail. You see here the light shade, and when you put the roughness to their value, it's getting smooth and rough and matte. That's the main attribute you can change between a glossy stuff and a matte stuff. Okay, we want a quite glossy look. I don't want it to be perfectly glossy, but some kind, yeah, roughness here is quite okay. Well, this is our basic stuff. I'm not happy with the blue. I'm changing it a little bit, so yeah, more or less should look like this. Okay. All the other attributes, just leave them, because we will dive in this then later on or in other rendering sessions. But for the beginning, that's more than enough. Then, here, this kind, I don't know what's English word for it, I just assign also a new material, go here again to shader, standard surface, rename it to Chrome, press enter, and here I use one of the presets because that makes my life a little bit easier. We have a lot of presets here. You see the first one is Chrome, and you can have a look at all the stuff here, and some of them are quite, yeah, they're all cool, of course. And what they do when I say here Chrome replace, I have my perfectly glossy mirror-like material. And the only thing, so what this preset does is it changes different values in here. You see here the metalness is set to 1, and my roughness is also here set to 0, what means I'm a mirror. And as I told you before, I don't want to have a perfectly glossy chrome. I want it to be a little bit rough. So just slide in there. You can see it a little bit better what my live rendering does. This is the effect you get. And I think it's not too bad. You see here the blue from the lampshade, which we have here. So material attributes, if you want to have it a little bit more glossy, you see it quite good what happens when I change the roughness, or even more matte. It changes also the color a little bit because it brightens up everything. Then you have to maybe adjust the color here when you don't want it too white, when you want to have it that, maybe that's a little bit too matte for my goal here. But that's how you can easily adjust your materials between glossy and matte. I guess I'll leave it here at 0.4. I like that look of the chrome. The next thing are the black parts. Actually, I take here this kind of stuff, then I can select different with the shift key. I select all the parts I want to have some kind of black material. Then I do also assign new material, again, standard surface, name it black. Then don't put it to 100% black. There should always be a little bit of value. The light could react a little bit. And I also don't want to have it, no, the roughness is here set to 0.2. Let's zoom in here how it looks. On the surface, not too bad actually. If you want to have it more rough, you know now what to do. The cable gets also black, but a more matte black. So I also do a new material. Oops. And here my PC is working quite hard here in the background. Assign new material, shader, black, solid surface, put it to black again, and I increase the roughness here quite high. And now have a look here at my plug. I also decrease here my specular color. It shouldn't be white, so that I get a more black matte look. You see it's quite matte already. And here at the bottom, or at the tips, you can put also materials just on faces. So I select here this stuff and assign a new material again. Assign new material. Always the same stuff. I take here the preset chrome again. And adjust the roughness a little bit so it's not perfectly glossy, and maybe I decrease the color so that it's not too white. Well, not too bad, isn't it? Oh, I forgot here one thing. This black stuff here, I assign so you can see it, sorry. Check mode, assign existing material, so I use the black I used on the button and the rest of the stuff. You can also use the matte black here from the cable of the plug. So give it a little bit of time. And then we just go, no, I forgot here the inside, because this is blue. This should be white. So what I do for selection is I click one face and double click, does it work? The one next to it. And now I go to select grow selection. So when you find this shortcut on your keyboard, then please use it. You can, with the left and the right arrow, you can shrink or grow selection. And I do that with here my shortcuts. So if you want to do it perfectly, maybe you please be careful that you here it's not, the selection didn't go too far. Actually, you don't see that inside, so it doesn't matter more or less. Then I give this a new material, name it white, enter, and I'll leave it actually to white here and see what's happening. It looks quite gray because there isn't too much light coming in there, and you see also the white background isn't perfectly white because now we have too less light in our scene. The white is getting white because we have here perfectly white setup. The only thing you can try is give it here also more weight, but the rest will do the light of the scene then later on when we do a little bit more of a setup. Of course, there are some more options to get it more light, but I don't want to confuse you with too much attributes in the first rendering steps. So then let's go to our light bulb. Again, same process, assign existing material. So I forgot to name some of the materials here. You can reuse maybe one of the chromes if you want to. I think that's not too bad. And for the lamp, we will use two different materials. I just want to show you. So assign new material. I show you how cool glass works here in the first step, standard surface. And when I go here to, no shit, light bulb. And when you go to presets, glass replace, you see we have a perfect glass. You can also, for example, try the, okay, there's a word called incandescent bulb. Some kind of leuchtende Glühbirne. See what happens when I use that, because it actually, yeah, it doesn't look good. Okay, so don't use that. But we have some kind of frosted glass. It's also cool. Okay, this is a little bit more, it's too blue, but you can give your glass also some kind of frosted look, or milky look. I just switch back to my normal glass. And what I do, when I adjust here some roughness, you can also give it a milky look, and it's not too much of how should I say, this blue frosty. So I'm quite happy with that roughness. And what I also do here, because remember the half of the lamp of the spot was some kind of more or less metal look, and I also adjust that. So I now selected half of that one and assign new material. Name it bulb metal. It's always important that you press enter after you typed in, And I use here the glass preset again and see what, I'm just trying what happens when I give it some more metal look. You see, now we have this kind of effect. And I also increase the roughness a little bit. I'm not sure it's too much metalness. Okay. I just want to have a little bit of difference. And a little bit more glossy. Of course, we shouldn't see through the whole glass here. It's just for you that we have our first playing with materials. And here in the glass, especially in the glass, you can see what index of refraction does, because different materials have different index of refraction. This is kind of Lichtbrechung, and you see it completely changes the look of your material. And there are different presets also here. When you have for a diamond or glass, they have different kind of Lichtbrechung or refraction. So I change it back here to glass, and you see it looks the most natural. So this is our first light setup. Let's render it so that it's not the finished rendering, it's the basic setup. And now we get a little bit more into the perfection of the rendering.